Hi, welcome to the Safer Sundays podcast, where we talk everything surveillance, security, personal data, and privacy. I'm Chris, CTO of Safer Cities.
And I'm Adam, COO at Safer Cities.
And today we're going to talk about how to go off-grid, be that moving off-grid from a physical standpoint and also from a digital online standpoint. Which one do you think would be harder?
Nowadays, I think digital would be harder. The amount of data and information you have to provide just to live your daily life, like the mobile phones, the amount of data they have on you, websites, etc. That would be a real challenge. So we should definitely talk about that.
Absolutely. I mean, have you ever thought about going off-grid yourself though, into like a cabin in the woods? Has that thought ever excited you?
A loose fantasy, never really planned, but the idea of sort of building a hut in the woods and sort of being self-sustaining with a farm and solar panels and things like that does seem appealing, but I probably wouldn't like to completely vanish from modern civilization.
I think the realities of that really would come into play, right? Like the idea and the fantasy of living in the woods and having all of your own vegetables grown and all that sort of stuff is a fantastic idea. And certainly, to some extent, I guess that's why people like going camping and all that sort of thing, right? Like we like to remove ourselves from the sort of day-to-day environment, the hustle and bustle. But certainly, removing yourself from an online standpoint is probably going to be one of the harder things to do now, given how much we use, like you said, our mobile phones. We put our emails into everything. We put our phone numbers into everything. And you were talking to me earlier around password reuse, and we might get into that in another podcast. But we do consistently put lots of personal information into our online identities, and I think it's really important to be talking about that and what implications that has going into the future.
Yeah, and these online identities may or may not actually be secure. They might not have good privacy protection. There might be some random website where you bought one item once that's been stood up by a guy who doesn't really know what he's doing, and then they've been hacked. Your details in their database have been compromised. And like you say, password sharing, if you've used your same password, say your password is password one, someone could guess that. Two, if they know that password from that website, they can go and try it against every other website. And then they might be able to get into your banking, your Facebook, your emails. Once you get into your emails, you can go forgot password on pretty much everything, and all your accounts are vulnerable.
Absolutely. I mean, I think people kind of forget or tend to forget, because we do so much of this stuff out of ease, and I guess we want to just sort of continue on with our lives. We do end up putting a lot of information into a lot of places that we maybe should be thinking twice about in terms of how secure and how safe is this person going to be holding my data safely and securely. What happens if something happens to this website where that data may be exposed? It's kind of something we don't think about. We've all been exposed to it for such a long time. But even things like visiting a website where you've had a Facebook or Instagram tracking pixel pick up that you've gone to that website. We've all been in that position, haven't we, where you'll be looking at something completely random on a website, and then all of a sudden you're bombarded with advertising with all of that. So it can be really interesting to look and start to bring some of those correlations together and go, wow, I went and had a look at something, some random product, and all of a sudden that's all I'm seeing for the next 3 weeks.
Yeah, I guess everyone's out to sell you something, right? And the advertisers, there's nothing more useful to them than the data on what you're interested in. If they know that you're looking at a new backpack, expect ads for backpacks, even once you bought one. It's crazy the amount of data that people are able to gather, or agencies are able to gather about you based on your usage of your devices, things you sign up for. Even, I know, like Instagram's algorithms, just how long you spend looking at something, whether you interact with it or not, that goes into the algorithm and impacts the kind of things you see in the future. And they sort of pick and choose on, real subcategory things that you can't even put names to. They just map these with other bits of content that are similar based on similar interests of other people.
Yeah, I mean, I guess given all of this data collection, it's a really interesting topic, isn't it? Because if you did want to wipe yourself from the internet, where do you start? If I tasked you with completely removing yourself from the internet, what would you do? How would you go about doing that? And do you even think it's possible?
I think everything's possible, but it would be extremely hard. So I guess step one would be to try and figure out everywhere that you are on the internet, and that alone is probably what's so hard about it. Is there'll be websites that I've probably had an email address since I was 10 years old. There'll be websites that I type my name into there, like, I don't know, to play games or something, wouldn't have a clue what they even are, if they still exist, where my data is, or definitely not how to delete it. So step one would definitely be go and have a look at your auditing. Social media are obvious ones, online shopping, any other accounts you've used for anything. So many companies probably have my email address, my contact details, my home address, although I've moved home probably a few times, I've probably got the wrong address, phone number, things like that. But it'll be everywhere. And some of them as well may or may not have your payment details, which is probably the scarier one.
Absolutely. I mean, I guess a lot of people are storing credit card details. We sort of, I guess, being in that security industry, understand things like PCI compliance and how strict and stringent that is. But like you say, we are constantly putting data into all these websites. I mean, I'm sure you probably had some embarrassing email addresses as a kid as well. I know I certainly did. And in fact, that still exists, right? I still have a Gmail account that now forwards to my new email account. But sort of kept for sake of keeping that account. So I had a really embarrassing email account. It was Server Junkie or something, right? I was 10 and really liked computers and servers. So shows how nerdy I am. Yeah. But that has carried through with me to today. So I would have been using my real name and my last name, and I think my phone numbers stayed the same basically the whole time I've had a phone. So isn't it interesting to think about how long we've been putting all this stuff into the internet, especially too, I guess like our generation, we certainly weren't at the forefront of the internet, but we were pretty new to the start of it. My partner's got family who've got some young kids, and we all have family where there's young children involved, and you can just see that these kids are, from the day that they are able to use a phone, they're putting their details into all these websites, and for them the reality of removing themselves from the internet is probably near on impossible.
Yeah, it's probably only getting harder and harder as our reliance on technology just grows and grows. Like simple things such as grocery shopping, you need your loyalty cards, just everything's linked back to you in more and more places, particularly around the pandemic and things like that. Cash payments were sort of discouraged. Obviously it's still legal tender, you can still pay with cash, but everyone sort of preferred paying with card and stuff. That's got details associated with it. That just everything you do has your details.
So tracking pixels follow us around the internet, I guess, everywhere that we go, and not everyone knows exactly what a tracking pixel is. Essentially what it is it's a hidden image or a piece of code that follows you around on the internet. Where that is useful is for people or agencies like data brokers, where what they're trying to do is collect as much information on you as possible to make your user profile as relevant to advertisers as possible. So they're building things like your gender, your demographic, where you are geographically, what your interests are, what sports do you like, what do you like to buy from the supermarket. They pull all of this information together into a single profile that they can then sell advertisers. So advertisers can go on to somewhere like Facebook and they can say, I want to target farmers in a rural place that are in need of really warm clothing to wear in the winter when they're knee deep in mud. And through all of that data collection, they're able to very specifically target those people and build on all that information that they need and serve things in a very particular way.
When did you start using the internet first, Chris?
Oh, I remember our first family computer, and it's kind of a funny story really. It was what ignited me into being sort of this tech guy that I am today, but having the old dial-up, right? Yeah. I used to remember always having to make sure that no one was on the phone, and you could always hear when someone picked up the phone while you were trying to download a really small little file or something off the internet. So I've been around on the internet, I wouldn't say since its inception, but certainly for a very long time. So a lot of my data will be all over the internet, and I certainly don't remember the places I was putting my data when I was of a young age on dial-up. So it's going to be very hard to if I ever wanted to go completely off grid and completely remove myself from the internet, where I'd even start to do that. Yeah, I mean, how about yourself?
Yeah, pretty much the same, right? Back in the dial-up days, using MSN and all those kind of things was probably, I think, the reason I had to make an email address. I can't remember what else I was using back then. I think RuneScape might have needed one, video games like that. So I'd have no idea how to recollect them. as you're talking, I'm sort of wondering if the easiest way to go off grid is just to change your name and start again.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and there is good reason why I guess identity changes exist. Well, we both know someone who was very much about not wanting, or sort of being very proud about not being on the internet. And I guess this person in particular really was someone who never really did much on the internet at all.
Yeah, and I think that's probably the important thing. And this person was probably 20 years older than us, so was an adult when the internet was coming out. So probably started with a more cautious approach. Whereas as a kid, you're just like, I want to get onto the service, give you all of the data you want. So I think it needs a very deliberate sort of strategy around what data you're providing and when, and being conscious of the fact that your data will be kept, it may be shared, it may be leaked, it may be released. And thinking of that from the start, there are tools around where you can have sort of instant email addresses for signing up and things like that. And you could, of course, use fake names, etc. And just not really using the internet or using all of its features is obviously a good way to do it. But once you've already done it, your data's out there. It is a lot harder to sort of bring it all back in.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, and we're talking in a way that may sound really scary, like everyone's got your data and this is a really terrible thing. I think really what it is, though, is just about being aware of where your data's being used, being a little bit more aware of, should I be trusting this website with my data? Is it going to be okay? I guess the internet is evolving in such a way whereby you do have bigger organizations providing services. So when you're doing your online shopping, more than likely your checkout process will be going through a company like Shopify, and they have very, very strict, stringent processes in place, and they're storing your data in a very secure way. So we can be safe about those. Certainly back in the day, you used to enter your credit card details into a website which wasn't even secure, and that always had a bit of a risk factor to it. So I think we are moving into a period of the internet now where things are more secure, but it's still that awareness factor that, okay, yes, I'm giving my data away. I do trust this company and this website, but hey, what I'm giving these people may not actually be something that is kept confidential. It may leak.
Yeah, and that's where things like you mentioned Shopify, I think Facebook's quite valuable there as well, where some people might not like Facebook, they're well known, they track what you do so they can advertise to you, but they do sort of offer the ability to manage accounts. So you log into a new site. So you log into a new site, instead of entering in your details, you can go connect with Facebook. That then talks with Facebook, gets the relevant details it requires, and your credentials are managed from Facebook, who obviously know what they're doing. They've got secure systems, as opposed to a website made by one guy who doesn't really understand security and he's storing your passwords in plain text.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of that, aren't we? I mean, Apple are doing the same thing with Sign In with Apple. I know they even have a thing where you can actually hide your email address as well, which is really useful. But yeah, like you say, being able to use these providers that are already doing lots of the security and authentication, and in fact, as software developers, they have a much easier task, right? They're not having to worry about storing passwords, storing personal information. They can just refer to someone else that already has that sort of thing. And I think we will see a lot of technology move to a place where we're not having to remember passwords, we're not having to enter our email address into everything. There's going to be more of a unified sort of experience around identity management, and hopefully all of that will keep building on itself to make things more secure. I guess early days of the internet, people, you even go back to when the internet was formed, a lot of the underlying technology was built on the assumption of trust. And of course, as the internet grows, more and more people use it, that trust diminishes, and so what we need to be doing is building on all these security practices. But often, technology advancements outstrip the actual thought process around how secure is this, and it's not until we see these big data breaches that occur that then processes and procedures and policies are put in place to make sure that doesn't happen again. Thanks for coming on the podcast today, Adam. That wraps up our show for today. Please make sure to look at our YouTube channel for more content.